It all started quietly, so quietly that almost no one on Earth even noticed. While the world argued over borders, resources, and who controlled what on the moon, something far bigger was being built in the shadows. Not in some secret underground bunker, but right out in space, hidden on the far side of the moon where no Earth-based telescope could see it. This wasn't a colony or a mining station. It was something new, something never attempted before, for years. The big space powers, America and its allies, China and Russia working together, and a group of European and Japanese scientists had been racing to get ahead in space. But after a few close calls and near misses between satellites and patrol drones, they realized something scary. If they kept pushing forward without talking, someone might accidentally start a war that spreads beyond Earth. So, behind closed doors, leaders from all sides made a rare agreement. They would build something together, not a weapon, not a base, but a shield. A way to protect humanity as it stepped deeper into the unknown. That project got a quiet name: Erebus. In old myths, Erebus was the personification of deep darkness, the space between Earth and the underworld. It fit, because what they were trying to do was make ships that could move through space without being seen. Not by radar, not by heat sensors, not even by the most advanced alien eyes, if those existed. The idea wasn't to sneak up on anyone. It was the opposite, to avoid being mistaken for a threat. The secret shipyard was tucked into a crater on the moon's far side, shielded from prying eyes by mountains and silence. Robots did most of the work, guided by engineers back on Earth and a small team living in a pressurized habitat nearby. The ships they built were massive, each one longer than 3 football fields laid end to end, but they gave off almost no signal. No engine glow, no radio chatter, nothing. That's because they didn't use regular fuel. Instead, they used something scientists had only just begun to understand: dark matter. Now, dark matter isn't like normal stuff. You can't see it, touch it, or weigh it on a scale. But we know it's there because of how it tugs on stars and galaxies with its gravity. For decades, it was just a mystery in textbooks. But in the 2040s, a breakthrough happened. A team in Geneva, working with labs in Beijing and Tokyo, figured out how to trap tiny amounts of dark matter in magnetic fields and use its gravitational properties to bend space itself. Not for weapons, but for travel. The idea was wild. Instead of pushing a ship forward with rockets, you gently warp the space around it like sliding on a cosmic current. And because dark matter doesn't emit light or heat, the ship would leave almost no trace. 3 ships were built this way. They looked strange. Smooth black hulls with no windows, no visible engines, just faint ripples in the metal where the containment fields hummed. They were named after old rivers of the underworld: Acheron, Styx, and Lethe. Not because they were meant to bring death, but because they moved through the void like ghosts. When the first one, Acheron, finally lifted off from the lunar surface in 2047, there was no countdown, no cheering crowd, just a soft vibration in the ground and then silence. It rose slowly, then faster, until it vanished into the black, undetectable even by the most sensitive instruments on Earth. Only a handful of people knew it had left. The rest of the world kept scrolling, arguing, living their lives, unaware that humanity had just taken its quietest, boldest step into the stars. But secrets don't stay hidden forever in space. Out there, someone or something was watching. A group of independent scientists not tied to any government ran a network of deep space telescopes scattered across the solar system. Their mission was simple: watch the sky, share data openly, and keep an eye out for anything unusual. One day, while scanning the space between Earth and Mars, their system flagged a strange anomaly. A patch of space showed slight gravitational lensing, like light bending around something massive, but when they pointed every camera and sensor at it, they saw nothing. No ship, no debris, just empty space that acted like it wasn't empty. At first they thought it was a glitch, but it happened again and again, each time near the moon's orbit. The team debated quietly in private forums. Some joked about invisible spaceships. Others worried it was a new kind of military tech being tested in secret. One researcher, tired of the guessing, posted a vague note on a public science board. Has anyone else seen odd gravity shadows near cislunar space? Feels like something's there, but not. That post got shared, then reshared. Soon, conspiracy channels, space blogs, and even a few serious news outlets picked it up. Ghost ships in orbit? One headline asked. Governments denied everything, of course. Routine satellite calibration, said one press release. Space weather interference, said another. But the rumors wouldn't die. What no one on Earth knew was that their whispers had already traveled farther than they imagined. Far beyond Mars, past the asteroid belt, even beyond Jupiter. There were others listening, not with radio waves, but with senses humans couldn't even imagine. And to them, those gravity shadows weren't just odd. They were terrifying, because in their experience, any species that could hide a ship that big usually did it for one reason: war. So while people on Earth argued over whether the ghost ships were real or just a glitch, something much bigger was about to happen. The silence that humanity had created to protect itself was now being read as a threat by eyes that had watched civilizations rise and fall for thousands of years, and those eyes were starting to worry. The ships themselves weren't doing anything aggressive. They just floated, testing their systems, mapping safe routes deeper into the solar system. But in the vast quiet of space, sometimes just existing in a certain way is enough to send the wrong message, especially when no one knows you're there and suddenly they feel your presence like a cold breath on the back of their neck. No one fired a shot. No one sent a warning. But the stage was set. Humanity had stepped into the galactic neighborhood not with a handshake but with a shadow. And shadows, no matter how well-intentioned, can look like monsters in the dark. What happened next would change everything, not because of what humans did, but because of how they were seen. And that misunderstanding, born from silence and secrecy, would echo across star systems, reaching ears that had never heard a human voice before. But for now, back on Earth, life went on. Kids went to school, farmers planted crops, scientists argued over coffee, and high above in the silent dark, 3 black ships drifted, unseen, unknown, and already changing the fate of a species that didn't even know it had an audience. Out past the edge of our solar system, near the red glow of Proxima Centauri, the closest star to our sun, things were quiet. Too quiet. A small team of alien observers had been stationed there for years, watching, learning, waiting. They weren't here to invade or interfere. Their job was simple: keep an eye on young civilizations as they reached for the stars. Most species took centuries to get this far. Humanity had done it in just a few generations. That alone made them interesting, maybe even promising. The observers came from 6 different worlds, all part of something called the Galactic Council, a loose group of older civilizations that believed in guiding newcomers gently, not controlling them. They'd seen species rush into space with loud engines, bright signals, and weapons pointed in every direction. Those usually burned out fast. But humanity? They were different. They sent out peaceful probes, shared scientific data openly, at least the public parts, and even left messages of hope on old Voyager records. That earned them cautious optimism. So when the Council's deep-range sensors picked up strange ripples in spacetime near Proxima b, a rocky planet that might one day hold life, they didn't panic. At first, they thought it was a natural event, maybe a micro-black hole passing through or a dust cloud with unusual density. But then the readings got stranger. The distortion was too smooth, too shaped, like something massive was moving through space, bending gravity around it but leaving no light, no heat, no signal of any kind. That had never happened before. The alien team double-checked their instruments, ran diagnostics, compared data across 3 different sensor arrays. All showed the same thing. An object the size of a small moon was gliding through the system, completely invisible. No engine flare, no communication burst, not even a whisper of waste heat, just a silent dent in the fabric of space itself. Then, without warning, their quantum communication relay, their lifeline back to the Council homeworld, flickered and died. Not from damage, not from interference, it just stopped working, as if space itself had been twisted just enough to break the delicate link. That's when real fear set in. Back on their ship, the observers huddled in the command chamber, their multicolored eyes wide with alarm. In all their records, no young species had ever developed stealth this advanced. Not even close. Hiding a probe? Maybe. But something this large? That kind of technology usually came only after centuries of war, after civilizations learned to hide because they'd been hunted, or because they'd become hunters themselves, and then, for just a few seconds, they saw it not with their eyes, Not with cameras, but through a gravity wave imager, a device that mapped distortions in space-time like ripples on a pond. For a brief moment, the shape of the object became clear. Long, smooth, utterly black with no sharp edges, no ports, no signs of life. It didn't turn. It didn't slow. It just passed through their observation zone like a shark through deep water, silent, purposeful, and utterly unaware it was being watched. What they didn't know was that the ship, humanity's Acheron, wasn't on a mission of war or spying. It was on a routine patrol, testing how far its dark matter drive could take it without needing to recharge. The crew, just 6 people, all volunteers, were more nervous than aggressive. They'd never been this far from Earth. Their orders were clear: observe, record, and above all, stay hidden. Don't reveal human presence unless absolutely necessary. The fear wasn't that someone would attack them. It was that someone would misunderstand them. But from the outside, it looked like the opposite. To the alien observers, this was a warship. A ghost ship. A predator that could appear anywhere, anytime, without warning. And if humanity had one, how many more were out there? Within hours, an emergency signal, encoded in neutrino pulses, the fastest and most secure method known, was sent racing back toward the Council's central hub, a planet called Valus Prime, thousands of light years away. The message was short, urgent, and filled with dread. Emergent species Sol 3 has deployed undetectable void craft of massive scale, capable of disrupting quantum fields. Intent unknown. Recommend immediate review of containment protocols. Back on Earth, no one had any idea what had just happened. The Acheron's crew finished their scan of Proxima B's atmosphere, logged the data, and began their slow, silent journey home. They joked over dinner about how weird it felt to be so far out, alone in the dark, knowing that if something went wrong, help was months away. They never saw the alien ship. Never knew they'd been spotted. Never imagined that their very existence, meant to protect, had just been read as a threat. Meanwhile, across the galaxy, the message reached Valus Prime. Council leaders dropped everything. Emergency sessions were called. Ancient protocols, dusted off for the first time in centuries, were activated. Because in the Council's long history, only 2 species had ever developed true stealth on this scale. Both had gone on to wage galaxy-wide wars that left entire star systems empty. The parallels were too chilling to ignore. Yet here was humanity, still broadcasting music, poetry, and math into the void. Still arguing on social media, still planting trees and building schools. How could a species so full of noise and chaos also build something so silent and terrifying? That contradiction haunted the Council. Was this a trick? A double game? Or was humanity simply so young, so reckless, that they didn't understand what they'd created? The truth was simpler. Humans were just trying to survive. They'd seen what happened when nations rushed into new frontiers without rules, on Earth, in the oceans, in orbit. They didn't want space to become another battlefield. So they built ships that couldn't be tracked, hoping that invisibility would buy them time to grow up before the universe noticed them. But the universe had noticed, and it was scared. The Acheron drifted on, unaware that its quiet passage had just lit a fuse across the stars. Back on Earth, children looked up at the night sky and dreamed of meeting aliens. Scientists debated the ethics of sending more signals into space. Politicians argued over budgets. No one knew that humanity's first real impression on the wider galaxy wasn't made with a handshake or a song, but with a shadow so deep, it looked like a weapon. And in the halls of the Galactic Council, a question began to spread, whispered in dozens of languages. If they can hide this well, what else are they hiding? Panic doesn't always look like shouting or running. Sometimes it's quiet, cold. It spreads in hushed voices behind closed doors, in encrypted messages sent at 3 a.m., in the way a leader's hand trembles just slightly when signing an order they hope never has to be used. That's the kind of panic that gripped the Galactic Council after the report from Proxima Centauri came in. Valus Prime wasn't like Earth. There were no cities lit by neon, no traffic jams, no social media feeds. Instead, the Council met in a vast chamber carved into the side of a mountain that floated gently in the planet's upper atmosphere, held aloft by ancient technology no one fully understood anymore. The air smelled faintly of ozone and old stone. Light came from living crystals that pulsed softly with the rhythm of decisions being weighed. And right now, the rhythm was frantic. The council wasn't a government. It had no army, no police, no power to command. It was more like a group of elders watching over a cosmic neighborhood, trying to keep peace not by force but by wisdom. But wisdom has limits when fear takes over. And fear was spreading fast. Some members wanted to act immediately. The Zinthari, a species shaped by centuries of brutal survival, argued that humanity had crossed a line. No young species develops void cloaking this early, unless they've already fought wars in the dark, their representative said, voice low and sharp like grinding stone. We must isolate Sol System. No signals in, no ships out. Let them grow up behind a wall before they bring their shadows to our door. Others disagreed. The Kailari, gentle beings who communicated through color shifts in their skin, reminded everyone that humanity had never sent a hostile signal. Their broadcasts were full of music, math, even apologies for their own mistakes. They are loud in their innocence, one Kailari elder shimmered. This may be fear, not malice. We should speak to them. But how do you speak to someone you can't see and who might be watching you right now without you knowing? That thought haunted the chamber. Every delegate glanced at the walls, half expecting a dark matter warship to phase through the stone like a ghost. It was irrational. Valus Prime's defenses would detect any intrusion, but fear doesn't care about logic. While the debate raged, the Council's science wing ran simulations. They modeled what a fleet of human void ships could do. The results were chilling. If even 3 of them existed, and they could hide perfectly, they could disable communication relays, sabotage supply lines, or appear beside a planet's defense grid without warning. Not because they were aggressive, but because their very presence bent space in ways that broke delicate systems. To the Council, it didn't matter if the humans meant harm. The risk was too great. Meanwhile, back on Earth, life went on as if nothing had changed. People walked dogs, went to work, argued about the weather. No one knew that their species was now under galactic suspicion. Project Erebus was still top secret. Even most world leaders only knew fragments of it. The public? They'd seen the rumors about ghost ships, but most dismissed them as conspiracy theories or sci-fi fantasy. Then came the mistake, during a routine UN deep space broadcast, a weekly data dump of scientific findings, weather reports, and cultural updates meant for any listening ears in the cosmos. An encrypted segment slipped through. It wasn't supposed to be public. It was a private channel between Earth space commands, but a software glitch routed part of it into the open feed. Just a few seconds. Just 3 words buried in static. Erebus assets stable. To humans, it meant nothing. To the Council, it was a bomb. Erebus. The name echoed through the chamber. In old human myth, Erebus was the primordial darkness before creation. To the Council, it sounded like a weapon system. Assets confirmed it. This wasn't one ship. It was a program. Fleet, the Zinthari stood. Enough debate. They are arming the void. We vote now. The motion was simple. Impose a non-interference cordon around the entire Sol system. No Council ships would enter. No signals would be answered. Humanity would be placed in cosmic quarantine, not as punishment but as protection. For everyone else, the vote was close. 4 in favor, 2 against. It passed. From that moment on, every Council listening post near human space went silent. Any signal from Earth was logged but not acknowledged. Any probe that drifted too close was gently nudged away by invisible fields. Humanity hadn't been attacked. They hadn't even been warned. They'd just been cut off. On Earth, no one noticed at first. Space is big and silence is normal. But over the next few months, scientists began to wonder why deep space data from certain regions stopped updating, why friendly alien frequencies they'd once detected, and assumed were natural, vanished completely. Some thought it was equipment failure. Others whispered, they heard us. And they don't like what they saw. The truth was worse. Humanity wasn't hated. They were feared. And fear, especially in the dark, breeds isolation. What made it all so tragic was that the humans had built their invisible ships for the exact opposite reason, to avoid being feared. They'd hoped that by staying quiet, they'd show they weren't a threat. Instead, their silence became the loudest warning of all. In council chambers and research labs across the galaxy, humanity's image shifted overnight. From curious newcomers to potential predators, from children learning to walk to wolves in the dark. And the worst part? No one on Earth could fix it, because they didn't even know they'd done anything wrong. Governments still argued over lunar mining rights. Kids still dreamed of being astronauts. Farmers still watched the sunrise. But out in the black, the door had closed. The galaxy had turned its back, not out of cruelty but caution. And in the vastness of space, caution can feel a lot like rejection. The humans had reached for the stars with open hands, but wrapped those hands in shadows. And now, alone in their little corner of the cosmos, they floated in silence, unseen, misunderstood, and slowly realizing that the universe might not be as welcoming as they'd hoped. But deep down, in the hearts of those who still looked up at the night sky, hope remained. Because if there's one thing humans are good at, it's finding a way to be heard, even when the whole galaxy is trying not to listen. The truth has a way of leaking out, no matter how deep you bury it. For years, Project Erebus had been locked away in vaults, encrypted servers, and whispered conversations behind soundproof doors. Only a few hundred people across the entire planet knew what the dark matter ships really were. Most thought they were weapons. Even some of the engineers who built them weren't sure. They followed orders, trusted their leaders, and believed they were protecting Earth. But one of them started to doubt. This person wasn't a general or a politician. Just a regular engineer. Someone who spent long nights calibrating containment fields and watching gravity readouts flicker on a screen. They'd signed up to explore space, not to hide in it. And the more they worked on the ships, the more they realized these weren't war machines. They were fragile, experimental, and incredibly hard to control. One wrong calculation and the dark matter core could destabilize, not explode, but vanish into a pocket of warped space, taking the ship with it. The whole point was to travel quietly, not to fight, but the secrecy was eating away at them. Every time they saw news reports about rising tensions in orbit, or heard rumors of alien watchers cutting off contact, they felt sick. Because they knew, humanity wasn't the threat everyone feared. They were just scared kids in a dark room trying not to make noise. So one night, after another sleepless shift, they made a choice. They copied files, not weapon schematics, but technical logs, safety reports, mission briefings, and sent them to a group called the Global Transparency Collective. This wasn't some hacker gang. It was a network of scientists, journalists, and citizen watchdogs who believed that space belonged to everyone, not just governments. They'd exposed cover-ups before. Maybe they could fix this one too. Within hours, the data spread like wildfire. At first, people didn't believe it. Fake, said one headline. Another deep state fantasy, said another. But then independent physicists started checking the numbers. The energy signatures matched known dark matter behavior. The ship designs had no weapon mounts, no missile bays, not even targeting systems. Instead, they were packed with sensors, labs, and emergency life support pods like deep space ambulances, not battleships. Slowly, the story changed. It's not a weapon, a retired astrophysicist said on live TV holding up a printout. It's a power source. A really weird, risky one, but peaceful. Across the planet, people began to understand. The ghost ships weren't hiding to attack. They were hiding because they were afraid of being attacked first. Public outrage grew, not at aliens, but at their own leaders. Why didn't you tell us? Became the rallying cry. Protests formed outside Space Agency headquarters. Students held vigils under the stars, holding signs that read, "We come in peace even when we're quiet." Governments tried to shut it down. Classified this, national security that, but the genie was out of the bottle. The truth was too big, too human, to contain. And then, something unexpected happened in space. The Styx, the second Erebus-class ship, was on a routine test near the edge of the solar system when it hit a storm of micrometeoroids, tiny space rocks moving faster than bullets. One punched through a shield layer and damaged the dark matter containment field. Alarms blared. The crew scrambled to stabilize the core. In the chaos, the ship's emergency system fired a neutrino burst, a last resort signal that could punch through almost anything to reach Earth. To humans, it was just a distress ping, but to the Galactic Council, still watching from a distance, it was a revelation. Their sensors caught the burst, not a weapon discharge, not a war cry, a call for help. And buried in that signal were harmonics, vibrations from the dark matter field that matched energy patterns used in peaceful applications across the galaxy. Deep space mining, gravity-assisted travel, even medical imaging. This wasn't a warship signature. It was a civilian one. Council scientists reran every simulation, compared the Styx emissions to known weapon profiles. Nothing matched. But it did match experimental transport vessels used by older species centuries ago. Vessels designed for exploration, not conquest. Doubt crept in. Maybe they'd been wrong. Maybe humanity wasn't hiding weapons. Maybe they were just clumsy, young, trying to do something incredibly hard and doing it in secret because they were terrified of failing in front of the whole galaxy. Back on Earth, the pressure became too much. Faced with global protests and undeniable evidence, world leaders held an emergency summit. For the first time in history, all major space powers agreed on one thing. It was time to come clean. They declassified Project Erebus. Not all of it, but enough. They released videos of the ships, blurred but real, explained the science in simple terms, and admitted their mistake. "We built these ships to protect peace," a joint statement read, "but in hiding them we created fear. That was our failure." Then came the boldest move yet. They sent a message, not just into space, but directly toward the last known position of the Council observers, near Proxima Centauri. It wasn't a demand, not a threat, just an open invitation. "If you're listening, we'd like to talk. We have nothing to hide anymore." The message included full technical readouts of the dark matter drive, safety protocols, even crew logs showing how nervous they were during their first deep space test. It was raw, honest, human. Across the galaxy, the Council watched, listened, waited. Some still didn't trust it. "A trick," muttered the Zenthari. "They show weakness to lure us close." But others, the Kaelari, the gentle ones, saw something different. They saw humility. They saw a species admitting it was scared and choosing honesty over pride. That to them was the mark of true maturity. And then, quietly, a small group of Council scientists did something against protocol. They sent back a signal, not official, not authorized, but personal. Just 3 words encoded in the same neutrino frequency the Styx had used. "We hear you." It wasn't peace. Not yet, but it was a start. On Earth, no one knew the message had been received. But the act of speaking openly, of choosing truth over secrecy, had already changed everything. The fear didn't vanish overnight. But the wall, it had a crack in it now. And through that crack, light could finally get in. The invitation hung in space like a single candle in a dark room, small, fragile, but impossible to ignore. Humanity had done the hardest thing, admitted they were wrong, opened their hands and said, "Here, look, we're not what you thought." Now they waited. Not with weapons ready, not with shields raised, but with quiet hope. Weeks passed, then months. On Earth, people tried to go about their lives, but eyes kept drifting upward. Kids asked teachers, "Did the aliens answer?" Scientists checked deep space receivers every hour. Even skeptics found themselves glancing at the night sky a little longer than usual. The silence was heavy, but it was a different kind of silence now. Not the silence of hiding, but the silence of waiting to be heard. Then, one ordinary Tuesday, it happened. A signal arrived, not through regular channels, but on a frequency humans had only theorized about. A stabilized quantum resonance band, clean and steady. It carried no images, no voice, just data. But embedded in that data was something unmistakable: coordinates. And a simple instruction: send one ship, unarmed, to this location. The spot was deep in the Oort cloud, far beyond Pluto, in a neutral zone agreed upon centuries ago by the Council for First Contacts. It was cold, empty, and safe. No planets, no resources, just ice and silence. The perfect place to meet without fear. After frantic but careful discussions, Earth's leaders agreed. They would send the Leith, the third and most stable of the Erebus-class ships. No weapons, no hidden systems. Just the ship, its small crew, and an open comms channel broadcasting everything live to every nation on Earth. This wasn't just diplomacy. It was trust made visible. The journey took weeks. Inside the Leith, the crew felt the weight of billions of hopes pressing down on them. They weren't soldiers. They were engineers, pilots, and one linguist who studied ancient human languages. Because if you're trying to talk to someone completely new, sometimes old ways of listening help the most. They ran drills, checked systems, and practiced calm breathing, not because they expected danger, but because they knew one wrong move, one misunderstood gesture, could undo everything. When they finally reached the coordinates, there was nothing at first. Just blackness and distant stars, then slowly space itself seemed to shimmer. Like heat rising off desert sand, the air, or rather the vacuum, rippled, and out of that ripple emerged a ship. It wasn't like anything humans had imagined. Smooth, organic, shaped more like a seed pod than a machine, it gave off a soft silver glow, not from engines, but from its very skin. No weapons visible, no aggressive angles, just presence. For a long moment, neither side moved. Then the alien ship sent a new signal, a series of gentle pulses like a heartbeat. The Lethu's computer translated it instantly. "We are here to see." The human crew responded the only way they could, with honesty. They powered down all non-essential systems, opened their hull sensors, and sent a live feed of their dark matter core, not hidden, not shielded, just there, humming softly like a sleeping animal. They showed how it worked, not to destroy but to bend space gently like a leaf riding a river current. They even shared the accident logs from the sticks, proving how fragile the technology really was. Hours passed. Data flowed both ways. The aliens sent back their own readings, showing how they'd misunderstood the gravity distortions, how their fear came from old wounds, not present truth. There were no accusations, just understanding, slowly building like ice forming on a quiet pond. Then something extraordinary happened. A small pod detached from the alien ship and drifted toward the Lethe. Inside wasn't a weapon or a spy drone, but a delegation. 3 beings wrapped in light-filtering suits floating gently. They didn't speak. They didn't need to. Through shared data streams and simple light patterns, they asked to come aboard. The humans said yes. What followed wasn't a grand ceremony or a treaty signing. It was quieter than that. Over the next few days, the 2 groups shared food, or what passed for it, showed each other star maps and played sounds from their worlds, birdsong from Earth, wind chimes from Valus Prime. They laughed at misunderstandings. They pointed at the same stars and gave them different names. And slowly the fear melted away, replaced by something far more powerful: curiosity. When it was time to leave, the leader of the delegation, a tall, calm figure with eyes that held galaxies, sent one final message to Earth, broadcast openly so every human could hear it. What we feared as a weapon was born of caution, a species hiding not to strike but to survive. You have shown us your hands. We will remember this. Back on Earth, people cried, not from sadness but from relief, from pride, from the sudden, overwhelming realization that they weren't alone and that they'd been given a second chance. The Galactic Council didn't throw a party. They didn't hand out medals, but they did something rare. They changed their rules. Humanity was granted provisional observer status, the first step toward full membership. There was one condition. All dark matter research had to be shared openly, not just with Earth but with the whole galaxy. No more secrets, no more shadows, and humanity agreed. The Erebus ships weren't scrapped. They were reborn. Stripped of their military-grade stealth protocols, they became deep space explorers, used to study black holes, map dark matter clouds, and visit worlds no human had ever seen. Their once-feared invisibility was now a gift. They could observe cosmic events without disturbing them, like watching a bird build a nest without scaring it away. Years later, schoolchildren would learn about the dark matter incident, not as a war that almost happened, but as the moment humanity chose truth over fear. Statues weren't built of generals or politicians, but of engineers and whistleblowers, the quiet ones who believed that honesty was the bravest thing a species could do. And out in space, the Lethe still flies. Not as a ghost, but as a bridge. Its black hull now carries symbols from dozens of worlds, painted by hands that once saw it as a threat. Every time it passes Earth, people look up and smile, not because it's powerful, but because it reminds them that even in the deepest dark, you can find light, if you're willing to turn on your own.